If our mind right now is so limited, it is limited in so many different ways. The basic misperception of reality, basic wrong appearance of phenomena, that's always present. Plus, sense consciousnesses are limited in one way, Mental consciousnesses are limited in a different way. I mean, like, wow, how can you actually generate the mind of a Buddha with all this limited mind right now? It would make much more sense if you could kind of take another mind, get that, put that in, kind of install it like a program, and get that to meditate. Right? So, right, we can't. So we need to take that very limited mind. But actually that doesn't matter, because if you think of exercising, if you want to do some exercise, yoga or gymnastics or any exercise, it's not like you take a well-exercised body, kind of install that and do it. No, you take a totally stiff body, like mine, totally stiff, and then that limited body, that's what you train. And by training it, you remove the limitation, because it has that potential, the underlying potential to be flexible, to do certain things. They're just they're just temporarily not there. And that's the same for our mind. Although there is a conceptual mind right now that can't perceive its object correctly, and the sense consciousnesses, they're limited, but those are just temporary limitations. Because of course the mind is luminous and knowing. That is the actual nature. So anything can appear to it, and anything can be known by the mind. There's nothing that the mind can potentially not know. But it's limited because of our misperception of reality. We've limited ourselves, basically. You know, people who are this makes total sense. In the sense, like, when you're very selfish, when we have a selfish attitude, what happens? It's like blinders. You know, like horses, they wear these blinders. It's just me. And we lose the ability to see the things around us. And I don't know whether you've ever noticed, like, of course we all have a certain degree of self-centeredness, but when we meet people who have stronger self-centeredness, like really strong obsession with themselves, everything that happens they think is to do with that. Oh, they talked about me. Oh, these people are looking at me. Because they think, right? They have this, I mean, we make lots of mistakes, which is the result of our misperception of reality. We're so focused on the I, we've lost the ability temporarily. We don't have the ability to see the whole picture. I know what I'm thinking, but I don't know what you're thinking. Actually my mind has the ability to know what you're thinking, which seems like, what? It seems impossible that we have, but my mind has that ability, but I'm not trained, because I'm so obsessed with my own mind and what I want and my attachment, I can't do that. But what may be convincing is, for instance, I have a friend in Dharamsala, and she gives people treatments, special treatments, like massages and stuff. So she once told me, I don't know how, she said, over the years I've been giving people treatment, and I touch someone's arm, and I can sometimes tell there's a problem. And she said, before I did this, there was an arm. Every arm was the same, like an arm. Or no, maybe a little bigger, a little smaller, a little bonier, or whatever. But other than that, it was just an arm. In my case, it's just an arm. I touch your arm, I just know it's an arm. That's it. And maybe the skin feels different or whatever, but if you do this long enough, you start noting things that other people don't note. Are you clairvoyant or whatever? No, it's just the ability of your mind through focus, right? Your mind generates an ability to now know things that other people would call mystical. It's only mystical because no one else can do it. But it's actually not that mystical. It's just what the mind can do. So we have all this ability. When we say a Buddha is omniscient, there's no big deal. We all have the ability to know things. Why? Because that's the basic function of the mind. But right now it's limited. It's limited because it's I all the time. So if I'm so obsessed with myself, my mind doesn't have the space to look at other things. And that's it. If I did, and so when you look at some of the lamas, when we say they have mystical powers, right? Clairvoyance, that's just the word that is given the ability for them to know, because we all have that ability, but they're not so obsessed with themselves and I, me, and mine, and my this and my that, and my attachment, etc. So the mind does what it can do best. It just knows other people's mind. So it all makes sense. It totally makes sense. And when you meet people who are less self-centered, you get a sense they know a lot more things, what's going on around them, right? While those who have stronger sense of, it's all about me. And of course I don't get the situation right. So you see there's a connection between self-centeredness and not knowing. Not knowing giving rise to that self-centeredness and reinforcing, they reinforce each other. The self-centeredness reinforces the not knowing, and the not knowing reinforces the self-centeredness and brings suffering. A state of mind that's not supposed to be there. It's not natural to suffer. Because it's not natural to misperceive phenomena. But since we do, the result is suffering. So it all connects, it all makes perfect sense. Okay? So this is what I'm trying to say here. So our mind is limited right now. The fact we have this conceptual mind, we can't perceive things directly, is only because we have temporarily limited ourselves through this misapprehension of reality. Okay? But we can only work with what we have right now. So this mind, the underlying nature is not, it's there. This underlying pure nature has never been gone. It's never gone and it will never go. Which is why we say we have Buddha nature. Why we have everything there to become a Buddha. We just need to remove what's extra. Okay. But the first step, because it all has to do with the mind. Whether you're enlightened or you're awakened or not, has to do with your mind. Whether you're a kind person or not, has to do with your mind. Whether you're fearful, everything that can be said about you is really mainly your mind. The body is just the external cover. But basically it all comes down to that. So this is why we need to understand the mind first to work with it effectively. Am I making sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Now, therefore, this part you can read on your own. So on page 20. All right. Now here, what I gave the explanation I gave here was from the point of view of, well, conceptual mind is the basis. Well, it's what our mental consciousness is. It's a conceptual mind. And it can be trained. It's very helpful, but we need to recognize its limitations at the same time. And before we can actually transform this conceptual mind, the mental consciousness, into a non-conceptual mind, well, we can use it to understand reality, to reflect upon how does the self exist, how do phenomena exist. But then when I explained here, I gave this explanation which I think is important, but I don't need to read through it, that there are different ways in which we can know something. So knowledge is important, knowledge of reality. But we describe phenomena in terms of phenomena being obvious, easily understandable, and those that are slightly hidden, and those that are very hidden. So there's a way in which we distinguish between phenomena we can easily know, that are difficult to know, and they're very difficult to know. Now, it's got nothing to do with the phenomenon itself, actually. It doesn't have anything to do. What makes a table? The table can be easily understood, but the subtle impermanence of the table cannot be. It's not like the subtle impermanence, that constant change of the table that's kind of hidden. The table is kind of a little nasty. It kind of hides its subtle impermanence. It's not that. Subtle impermanence is right there. It's like right in front of us. But we cannot perceive it. Why not? It's hidden to us. The table is not hidden. I can see that easily. But the changing nature, from moment to moment, this table is changing. Why can I not perceive that? Why is that hidden? Pardon?
Too subtle.
Yeah, but it's not, I mean, slow. We can watch a really fast movie, etc. It's very fast. I mean, it changes very fast. But even if I cannot, I'm not able to perceive the nanosecond change, but I can't even perceive the second. I can perceive a second, like an alarm clock, right? I can see how, so I can actually perceive change in terms of but why can I not perceive the change seconds?
Because the eye doesn't see.
Pardon?
Small, slow.
It's very small.
That's the reason why.
Pardon?
Our nature won't let us to see it.
So the nature of our mind won't allow us to do it. I totally agree. But why?
Because we have a limitation. That's the reason.
Where does the limitation come from? Yes.
The senses are mad as us, and because of the concept that we have this concept that it's already solid, so we can't.
Yes. It's that misdirection we already have, this misperception from the beginning. Vada, what is it?
We move also.
Pardon?
We move also. All the parts in us, they move in the same also.
Yes, of course.
So there's nothing that can grasp something.
No, but what I'm saying, like, why our mind, well, first of all, why would we have a limited sense consciousness? Why do we have a limited sense awareness? Why is it limited? It is limited, we are born with this, because it's a result of our previous mind. Actually, from a Buddhist point of view, this is really profound. Our mind is responsible for who we are in terms of the body we have, for instance. It's all wishful thinking. Geshe just recently talked about this. This is a little bit difficult to understand. Unless you have some background, it may be a little hard to understand, but not necessarily. Some may have an easier time. But actually, we wish for things all the time. And those wishes actually come true. Which is why prayer works. Not immediately, but actually, from a Buddhist point of view, everything we wish for. But we're not very good at wishing. For instance, when we die, we are reborn. Just take this from a Buddhist point of view, even if you have a hard time with reincarnation, but just allow that possibility. We are reborn. When we die, at the moment of death, a new karma that throws us into a new existence will definitely ripen. Why? Why? Because we want it to. It's not like going, I wish a karma would ripen. I want this karma. It doesn't work like that. But there's a strong craving. Craving is a wishing mind. Craving, attachment, is a type of emotion that wishes for something. When I say afflictive emotion, an afflictive emotion is always a mind that wants something. An afflictive view just views things in a certain way. That's all it does. But an afflictive emotion wants something. It's an emotion because it wants something. And these two, afflictive emotions and afflictive views, are afflictive. But we have non-afflictive ones that are good, that are positive. Again, emotions that wish something and views that view things correctly. Give me an example of an emotion that wishes something that is not afflicted. Love. You wish for someone to be happy. You wish for someone to be free from suffering. That is a non-afflicted wish, which is not influenced by a misperception. And then, just the understanding that phenomena, that things are impermanent, that things don't exist objectively, that is a non-afflictive view. Okay? So we have that. We have those correct views, and those are the ones we want to cultivate. Non-afflictive emotions, wishful thinking, so love, compassion, etc. And then non-afflictive views, understanding of impermanence, etc. But right now, the afflictive emotions, I am more important, I want this for myself. I want this person to be dead. I want this person to suffer, right? Those are the afflictive emotions. And this person is permanent, they exist inherently as being evil or inherently as being positive and wonderful, and they can give me true happiness. Those are afflicted views. All slightly off. Slightly off. Now, when I said before, the reason we are reborn is because of these afflictive emotions. It's afflictive emotions. Emotions are wish-fulfilling minds. So if you have an afflictive emotions, when you die, right, what happens when you die? Your body and your mind separate. And there's a sense you're disappearing because you can feel that process of the mind growing subtler and moving away from your body. And fear arises. And going out of existence. No, I want to exist. Great. All the ingredients for a new existence. Right? In that moment, you can't help it. You can't help it. When you die, it may even be a subtler mind that you have no control over. You will crave. As long as there's the misperception of reality, you want to exist within samsara. You want to exist. You want to continue to exist the way you do. That's why we're still around. We want to. We actually want to. And so it's craving in all its different, so we want this, we want that. And that creates all the different situations we experience in this lifetime, but also in a future lifetime. Now, a Buddha and a Bodhisattva, they also use these wishful minds. But that's not craving. It's not attachment. It is wishing others to be happy. So they wish to be around for others. It's still that wishing mind, but it's not I, me, and mine for my own sake, but for the sake of others. And so they also have a body. They also come along in a certain way, but in a very wonderful way. In a way in which is inspiring to others, so like the Dalai Lama, etc. And they can even control that. But it all comes down to wishing to exist. I know it's a little bit extreme, this explanation, but it's so profound. Geshe just gave it recently, and if you think about this, then everything makes sense. That our afflictions control where we go right now, and if you can just replace them, you cannot go out of existence, but if you replace these afflictive emotions, these incorrect emotions, with emotions that consider others as equally important as yourself, you continue to exist, but in a very different way. In a way in which you can't help it but experience peace and happiness. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
So prayer works. When we say prayer, you don't necessarily have to pray to an entity. I mean, you could ask for assistance the way you ask a doctor to help you. So there are living beings who can assist us, whether we can see them or we can't see them. But it's actually much more of creating the causes for experiencing this. Right? You wish, and if it's a wish that is motivated by love and concern for others, then you have a positive effect. If you wish your neighbor be dropped dead because you just can't stand him, well, then that may actually have the opposite effect, because it is harming the other person, and the harm going out comes back to you, because everything is connected. So if you really understand that, then everything in the Dharma, the way it's explained, actually makes sense. The afflictions not being good, karma, how it works, how the mind continues on, and how we have these experiences all the time that we actually don't wish, that we don't want. Because there's an ingredient that is afflicted, and if that is afflicted, the result will be something we don't want to experience. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, I've gone a little bit out of my way. Can I wait?
Sure.
Yeah. Please keep this point, because I want to go through this a little bit, but I'll address whatever question you have. Okay, now having said all this, so it is therefore vital to first work on our perception of reality, because these emotions, these exaggerated afflictive emotions, they're the result of our misperceptions. That's it. So the only way to overcome them is to first set things right. So to understand those things, well, the obvious things, they're obvious to us, tables, etc. But then impermanence, the fact that things change all the time, that things exist subjectively and not objectively, this we have a hard time understanding, just because we are so used to perceiving the opposite, due to our habituation with regard to reality, like a misperception of reality. So we're trying to deal with this, we're trying to counteract that. And so what helps us is logic. Logic is a tool to understanding. It's not the only tool, but it's one of the tools. And what I describe here is just the process of using your conceptual mind in such a way that we gain an understanding of reality. Okay? And we cannot do so directly, as in like, oh, phenomena are impermanent. Okay, let me understand it. It doesn't happen automatically. It's not like you can look at a table and understand it's a table. because it's subtle for us, it's subtle, it's hidden to us, because of our misperception, we need to take something coarser, easy to understand, that connects to that. And that is called a logical reason, a sign. Okay? Because everything is interdependent. If phenomena really were permanent, although they change all the time, but if they were hypothetically permanent, then this would have consequences. This would have absurd consequences. Right? So understanding the absurdities that would occur as a result of phenomena not changing, so these absurdities are more obvious to us. They're more obvious to us. But not just that, we can also understand, for instance, the fact that phenomena don't exist inherently, based on the fact that they depend on causes and conditions. So the fact that they depend on causes and conditions, that's easier understandable than the fact that they are not totally independent of the mind. So we use facts about phenomena that are easily understood, relatively easily understood, as the reasoning to then go to those, to tackle these ideas that are actually quite difficult. Okay? So this accounts for correct reasoning. Like logic is just another way of saying you take facts about an object that are easily understood, and on the basis of understanding them, you can prove a deeper truth about them. Because that fact and that deep truth, they're connected. So once you understand the connection, then you can come to understand, for instance, that phenomena don't exist inherently. It becomes clear to you. The classic example, if you see smoke, which is easily perceptive, you can infer correctly that there must be fire. So the fire is not visible to you, but it's on the basis of this sign, the smoke, that is visible, that you can infer that there's fire. So it's the same idea. And that's what's explained in here, that you can use a conceptual mind in a way in which you can understand reality that is hidden right now through applying logic. So our mind can still use logic, and it's a tool, which of course at some point we have to leave it behind. But this accounts for, in Buddhism, the whole idea of debate and logic, to train yourself in logic as a tool to a better understanding. Okay. Alright, that should be enough. And then on page 22, of course you may still have questions, but you need to read this first, and if you have questions, you can then, you're welcome to address those. Yes, so basically what I just described to you, is the fact that we can utilize this mental consciousness, the conceptual consciousness, through particularly understanding reality that is slightly hidden, and even reality that is very hidden. Very hidden, like the very subtle working of cause and effect. Even that we can understand to some degree, which is necessary to remove our problems, our suffering, etc. Because not understanding them is responsible for our suffering. Okay, it's like with the monster in the closet. Understanding that there is no monster in the closet is the only way to remove the misperception that there is a monster. So similarly with regard to our basic misperceptions. And so it is this conceptual mind, however limited it is, that we use to develop wisdom. Wisdom as in like understanding reality, but also generate bodhicitta, love, compassion, etc. Alright. So those are conceptual types of awareness. And then there's non-conceptual consciousness. And here, and I said previously, this is the Prasangika school. So in the lower schools, the divisions are slightly different. But when you go to page 22, so a non-conceptual mental consciousness. Of course, sense consciousnesses are always non-conceptual. But a mental consciousness that is non-conceptual, there are actually only two types. A dream consciousness that can be non-conceptual, and a yogic direct perceiver. A yogic direct perceiver. So a yogic direct perceiver, it's a little hard to understand, and I'm not going to go into the explanation of the path that you have here on the next page. There's a whole explanation on the different types of path. I added it because I thought if you're interested how you can develop your mind by utilizing these awarenesses we discussed, well, then you can read this on your own, at your own time. But it would take too much time to explain all this, and it's not part of Lorik as much. But I wanted to show you how the understanding of Lorik can be helpful to understand how you can transform the mind and turn it into a liberated or awakened mind. Just for that purpose. But to say this much about a non-conceptual mental consciousness, which is a yogic direct perceiver, this is based on the idea that any conceptual mind, if you train it, it can eventually move past this generic image, no longer relies on it, and can directly perceive its object. Now that seems like, how would that be possible? Right now, that seems inconceivable. I think with dream consciousness, we don't have such a hard time to imagine you have a dream that is just as vivid as you would see the thing in front of you. I guess we kind of have a sense that's possible. But to think that you focus on impermanence, for instance, or the fact that phenomena are dependently arisen, which right now you can only understand conceptually through this generic image, but that you can train your mind to such a degree that that generic image falls away and you directly, as if it was right in front of you, have a perception of interdependence, for instance. That's like, how does that work? It doesn't have a shape or color, right? For us, direct perception must have a shape or color or a sound or something, but interdependence doesn't have a shape or color, and still you can perceive it directly. How's that possible? Well, that's like the blind person who's blind since birth asking, like, how's it possible to see blue? Right? Having no real idea of it. Of course, naturally, unless you have an experience of it, it's hard to believe it's possible. But logically, it makes sense. And what you need to develop to be able to do that is a mind that is very focused, very concentrated. So the way to bring about such a concentrated mind is through developing what is called calm abiding. Calm abiding. It's a special state where you can focus on one object with great clarity and great focus for at least 4 hours. Seems impossible, right?
Yeah.
4 minutes, 4 seconds can be a challenge. 4 minutes is difficult. 4 hours, right? But as anything, what you can't do today, if you keep training in it, at some point it'll become easier and it becomes more and more possible. And those who practice this intensively, if they have the right, and you need a lot of you need a lot of, you need to have a very meritorious kind of mind, a very virtuous kind of mind. If you have a lot of negative thoughts, what happens to your mind? It becomes very agitated. So it's a lot of people nowadays are interested in the practice of shamatha, or calm abiding. Because they're like, 21st century, it's so much work, and if I just a little bit of calm abiding, and anyway, it's important for Buddhist practice, and you can deal with life much better. But we have a problem as Westerners, because we get very attached to shamatha. Shamatha and calm abiding. Whoa, everyone wants to do it these days, like the whole craze. Which is great to develop it and move on. Because it's just a tool. There's so much else you need to do, but a lot of people just get stuck in that. And to also know, you need to live a certain type of life, a very virtuous life. Because a virtuous life, an ethical life, ethical just means to not harm yourself and others. If you can avoid doing that, your mind will grow naturally calmer. If you have a mind that is, the moment you want to harm someone, the moment you have aversion, your mind becomes very jittery. And a jittery mind will not allow you to generate calm abiding. So it's very important to first remove any kind of unethical behavior. I'm not talking about beating up your neighbor, that anyway. But even the mental state that makes it possible to right? It's very hard. So let's be realistic. If you have that kind of mind, if you can avoid harmful thoughts, and you're at least in an equal, like in a neutral mind most of the time, then you can be a candidate for calm abiding. But if you're like angry and you usually have a fight with your and then you sit down for calm abiding, forget it. No way, it's not going to happen. So there are lamas for instance, the previous Ganden Tipa Rinpoche,